Good morning. It's Wednesday Wisdom, and we're in the middle of the week. And oh my gosh, is life going fast? It's full on, isn't it? Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Elizabeth. Although I just tell you good evening.
Good evening. So for those that religiously watch Wednesday Wisdom, we are on a little bit late because Kim and I are in different time zones, and we forgot to say that daylight savings is finished. So we organised it in daylight savings, and then but it's all good because that's what happens when you country to country, right?
I mean, it's wonderful that we can do it, though. So
absolutely. So where are you, Kim?
I'm in Trinidad. So
Trinidad.
Yep. Southernmost island in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow. And so what's the weather like there at the moment?
Warm, but we are having some thunderstorms. So the last 2 days have been, for a couple hours around lunchtime. It's been pouring rain, thunder, lightning, but then it clears up and the sun comes back out and it's clear again. But we're
so
tomorrow.
I'm assuming it's like tropical weather, like because it's the Caribbean, yeah, and that happens, right? Those summer storms, and I lived up in far north Queensland, so and it's still it's bizarre, isn't it, when it's raining but it's still hot. yeah. So Kim, we're talking about empathy in relationships, and this is such a beautiful topic because it's so needed for personally I see that things are shifting in relationships and people are starting to open up and become more vulnerable and all of those things, but in our history in the last couple of decades, people's wounds would just butt heads with each other, and women thought that it was their right to go off at their men and walk out, and vice versa, right? And so this is such a pertinent topic.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And how I came up with today's topic as well is because empathy has been something that I've been working in very, very deeply for the last, I would say, 5 years. And so for me, I look at empathy as a 3-step process. And it starts as Elizabeth would know that one of my hats is that I am also a lecturer in Latin American history and Spanish, which then led me to my first set of work online, which was creating that awareness of Latin American culture to build cultural empathy. And that was across people, across diverse groups of people, to explore our differences, to honor our differences, but then also to enjoy our similarities. And that word empathy, just from the time I started, I just fell in love with empathy and what it represented, and that ability to see from somebody else's point of view and to cherish.
And that's actually how we met, right? We actually started talking because through a business training that we both did, and we had a discussion, and that was where you were working with cross-culture relationships, right?
Yes. So that's what happened. Yeah. So through that work, I ended up now looking at empathy in relationships one-on-one, because again, now we're not looking just at the empathy across groups of people, but now in a couple where that dynamic is even more intimate and more poignant, because now you have two people trying not just to meld their cultures and meld their languages, but meld their lives. So again, empathy, and it comes up again and again and again, because now how do I understand where this person is coming from? And very carefully, am I just assuming it's a language issue? Am I just assuming it's a culture issue? Or maybe it's simply a human issue?
Yeah. It's really interesting, actually, because as you know, that the work that I do works along the lines of, like it's got a science base to it, and it's epigenetics and quantum physics and all that sort of stuff. And epigenetics, is the study of all this generational baggage or traumas, or, like all this history that we've got that's stuck in our DNA. And so, culturally, like we could be coming from the same country, but have all this generational, dysfunction within our system that's causing discrepancies within the relationship, right? So I'm glad to, because it's still a cultural thing in a way, isn't it, right?
It is. And even when the couple has a fairly similar background, you still end up with that situation of, we come from different families. Our histories are very different, no matter what, and then that can cause a significant clash between people. And then again, taking it another layer and bringing it even closer to home, we come now to the kind of self-empathy part of it. Because if you can't find it within yourself to have grace for yourself, to forgive yourself for your past, for your mistakes, how are you supposed to then find it for somebody else?
Absolutely. And so let's just go back up a little bit, just for the, just as a part of the discussion. Can you tell us what your interpretation or definition or understanding is between sympathy and empathy, and what's the difference? Because there's a big difference, right?
So in some ways, I think of sympathy as, and again, this is my perspective on it. In a way, when you say that you may be sympathetic to somebody or have sympathy for them, you are sometimes putting yourself, all these, I want to use the word I would be putting myself in a position above the other person, as in for some reason I am better than or more than, and therefore I am now extending sympathy to somebody who is less than.
Poor you, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then my actions are in that dynamic where I'm treating somebody not as my equal, but as somebody I need to help, and they are inferior to me. Now that may not be true for everybody, but that's how I look at sympathy. And again, not saying that it's wrong to have sympathy for somebody, but if we look at empathy, where empathy is between two equals, where we can understand where somebody is coming from, we can be sensitive to their needs, and we can still want to help, but we're not looking at it as I have to pull you up or out because I am stronger. I am your support. Right now you need support. Here I am. I can offer it. And maybe in the future I will need support and you will be able to offer it, because we are equals. And so that to me is where that difference between empathy and sympathy comes.
Yeah. And for me also, I think sympathy, just from an energetic point of view, can hook you in, that there's victim to victim, or there's a hook somehow. Whereas empathy is, seeing someone's condition or situation and knowing that you can support them without having to jump into their shoes in some way, or get caught up in the energy of it, but holding strong, ready, as you said, because you'll need it one day too, right? Like it's a combination of, that's how life works.
Yes, exactly. I make it less about me and more about them.
Yes.
Sympathy tends to be a bit, how do you make me feel?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so tell me how you work with people through that process. Like what is it that you do?
Well, it really is, and that's why I kind of went on to the self-empathy part, because we tend to start by looking at, I am feeling a particular way because my partner has done X, Y, or Z. My partner has said X, Y, or Z. He or she should do something else compared to what they are doing. So it's okay. In my case, I tend to work mainly with the female partner. So let's start with your partner is not here right now. So let's look at you. What is it that you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you are trying to say? How does your present reflect your past? Now, we're not going to fall down in your past, but there's a reason why you feel the way you feel right now. And now let's look at how you can forgive yourself for something that may have happened in the past so that you can be more positive in the present. And once you can be more positive in the present, then we can now look at perspective. You know, and if we're looking at perspectives, now let's look at what your partner is saying. What is your partner doing? How does that make you feel? But what is your response to that? What is your responsibility in that situation?
It's so true. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, well, I was just going to say that again, coming back to that separation of tasks, in the sense that it's responsible for me and how I feel. I cannot control another person and I cannot determine their intentions. I can ask them. You know?
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, I've always reflected on myself first. Like, what is it that, how come I'm feeling this way? Because when there's something going on in a relationship, whatever the relationship is, it's your own triggers and that past, you know, the current reality, what's going on now from all this baggage that's triggering you to react rather than respond. And so by asking someone, you know, like, to have that empathy for self and reflection, you know, when someone does something, the trigger's gone. And so, you know, there is no need, you know, like you may be able to, and that's the difference between the sympathy and empathy in my understanding as well. Is sympathy is when you're getting triggered, you know, like, oh yeah, I feel that too, you know, like, or whatever. And empathy is no trigger there anymore. I actually feel for you because I've been there before, you know, and being able to understand somebody else, but not have it like respond to them rather than, and especially a you know, a relationship partner, you know, your child or your husband or your partner or, you know, whoever it might be, you know, deep friendships and things like that. They can bring up a lot of triggers, right? If you haven't looked and self-assessed first and found empathy for your own situation and your own woundings, right?
Exactly. And then you just sit down there and you kind of spiral sometimes to this, why me? Why can't they do this? And it's a hard situation to kind of dig your way out of if you don't have that grounding of, I am in control of me.
And so on top of that, you then have the wisdom and knowledge and ability to go into the depths of the cultural aspect as well, which is so that's great, because, you know, like, to be able to bring that awareness. You know, I remember when, like, I had a partner that was German, and so you know, that cross-culture thing was really evident, you know, because very different, even the language, you know, English being his second language, and you could see when he was trying to work out where I was coming from or where the kids were coming from, you know, and then us having to determine where he was coming, you know, because very sharp, you know, and stoic energy, you know. So, yeah, those elements are something that can be missed from someone that doesn't have that understanding. Can you tell us a little bit more about that part?
Yes. So actually, before I even go into the more specific Latin American one, there is certain cultures are more open and loud, and others are quieter and more introspective. And then you get people who come and I mean, we could say, yes, but you have introverts and extroverts. But sometimes if it's just a cultural thing, you can have an introvert from an extroverted culture who's just used to being operating at a certain high level that seems like shouting to the person coming from the more demure culture. But so, for example, one thing that comes up a lot in working with couples in that, and it's mostly ends up being American and Latin American experience. The idea of my in-laws can speak Spanish, can speak English, but they only speak Spanish at home, and I feel left out of the conversations. And sometimes it comes out as they're being rude to me because they can speak English. Why won't they speak English when I am there? And I can understand exactly where that comes from, because you would think they know I don't speak the language. They should make the effort to use the language that we all communicate in. Fine. Let's look at it another way now. You are learning a second language, but where are you more comfortable? Are you more comfortable in your first language or your second one? What do you automatically slip into? Somebody asks you
at home, right?
At home. Exactly. Exactly. So, and to many on the outside, it might seem, but that's a simple issue. They're not really being rude, but often it's completely missed, because especially if one of the partners has not yet tried to learn a second language, they don't quite yet grasp how easy it is just to slip back into your mother tongue, or how hard it is, because when you're learning a language, or even after you've learned it, you don't feel as confident in it. So your mother she isn't trying to belittle you. She just doesn't feel comfortable speaking in English because it's not her forte, and it makes her feel. So you're both in this position of, you both want to project this more confident, welcoming environment, but you're both more comfortable expressing yourself in your own native language.
And both sides, like I can empathize on both sides, because I've experienced, I went to Germany and at first everyone was speaking English for me, but then they naturally, went back into, it was a task. And then when they were at home, they, started speaking German. And I just felt completely, it only took a couple of days or 2 or 3 days before I felt completely isolated. Like, it's a very weird feeling to feel like you're deaf almost, like it's a really weird feeling to be surrounded by people and not be able to communicate. And yet, as you said, it's having to switch their brain, and I'd been there for a week and a half already, so it's a really interesting dynamic, isn't it? But I was never offended, but I can see when it's like I was only there on holidays. When it's someone, and you've got a house dynamic, it could be a real challenge, right? And neither party are wanting to be, abusive or neglectful or any of those things, but it's a natural occurrence.
It is a natural occurrence, and it's very common, and it's one that comes up so very often. And again, we come back to the empathy part of it, and being able to be vulnerable enough to even express to the in-laws at some point that I understand it's harder for you to speak English, but I really do feel left out, and I'd appreciate if you could make that effort a little bit more. But then that takes a certain level of courage as well to be able to express that.
Depending on the relationship, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Don't ask when you now have, the other grandkids, the cousins and the siblings, and it's a matter of, well, this one's son speaks Spanish. Why can't you teach yours Spanish? Why is he only speaking English? And
I can imagine. Oh. And so
on multiple levels.
yeah. And so Kim, have you found, working, have you had any experience with working with Australians and cross cultures in that area?
I have not as yet.
Okay. That's really interesting. My daughter's in a cross-cultural relationship. Her husband's Pakistani.
Oh wow.
And they've got a beautiful relationship. And yeah, she speaks to the family over there on a regular basis, but most of them don't speak English. So but I can see that it would be like I see the dynamics between the two of them and working out, like that's part of his culture, that's part of my culture, like they've been married now for 5 or 6, I think it's 6 years this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they have had their moments, but, they were really good friends prior to before, getting married for a couple of years. So, like they've got a great relationship outside of marriage as well. So, but yeah, I just firsthand seeing how that can be a bit of a challenge. I'm watching them work that out as they go along. So,
go ahead.
What was that? Sorry, reminds you what?
Of an article I read once where it was an older French woman who was speaking about her relationship with her Tunisian husband, and she said, sometimes I don't know if it's because he's Tunisian, if it's because he's old, or if it's because he's a man.
Yes, absolutely. I've had those conversations with my daughter as we discussed, some of the challenges she's had. And I'm like, well, I think that might be just him being a man, right?
That's many times it just comes down to that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Different brains, right? Different and it's true, there's no discrimination in that. Men and women have got completely different wiring. So it's just the way it is. So it's been lovely to talk to you, Kim. If we have, because we've got mainly Australian members here on Women of Light, and this is going out to YouTube and other platforms as well. So we have a lot of different countries. How can people get in contact with you if they would love to, have the opportunity to work with you in this cultural, diverse world that we live in?
Feel free to visit my website or send me an email. So the website is overtheandes.com, and I'm Kim at overtheandes.com. So
awesome.
you can find my contact information there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And so when we finish, if you can just go in and put those links in so people can get in contact with you, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, and it's lovely to be able to speak. We live in such an abundant world that we, can have this experience of being able to communicate over oceans, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And
time zones, and absolutely, yeah, it's such a magical world, right?
It is. Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. Enjoy your Wednesday.
Yes, thank you. So what day is it there? Tuesday.
Well,
yes.
I haven't even dinner yet.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you. See you on.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.